mission statement, we develop knowledgeable, competent, responsible citizens through inspirational and innovative learning opportunities. Can we all rise? And Mrs. Toomey, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Similar to other meetings where we've had a board member not able to attend and they've been here by Zoom, we have Mr. Hubbard today by Zoom. So when we call votes, I'll call votes first for everyone in the room, and then after that we'll call a separate vote for Mr. Hubbard. So let's start off with the agenda. Has everybody had the opportunity to take a look at the agenda? And does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Daniels, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander and Mr. Russell. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard? If you're muted, Mr. Hubbard, we can't hear you. Are you losing, Pam?
Aye. Sorry.
Not a problem. Opposed? Hearing 5 ayes and no opposed, the agenda is hereby adopted. Next, we have a special presentation from one of our favorite groups, the Red Alert Robotics team. So we'll turn the floor over. Lisa Thorad, I think you have a statement to make on their behalf.
I'm going to let our student leaders here make that statement for us, if that's okay.
Nothing personal, but we always love to hear from the students.
Well, they are the best, right? We like to say that rugged leaders are robotics. So
Absolutely.
welcome to the student.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jacob Holman, and I'm the executive captain of our robotics team. I'm joined with Isabel Baxter. She's our operations captain, and I've got Brenda Forat with me, and she's the business lead. We basically just want to thank you guys for your support. We were able to achieve a lot last season, even though our season got cut short. It was not to the degree we expected it would be, obviously. But we achieved a lot, and we really want to thank you guys. We'll turn it over to you.
So last season, even though our competitions actually got canceled, we were able to go along with the judging process through Zoom, and we actually won tournaments, which is the highest award that robotics can offer, and it won at a state level.
I think that was Joe cheering you on, isn't it?
Yeah, so, like
That was my chair.
we interviewed virtually for chairmen, and we won it at the state level, so we have our bags for you guys. And in those bags you'll find a medal that has like the state chairman's medal, and a mug, and just some things about our team. And if you have any questions or wanted sort of a shot, our website is redalert1741.org.
Awesome.
So what's the prognosis on the upcoming season?
We just got an email about an hour ago that is a little up in the air.
Okay.
The big challenge is finding venues, because most schools don't want to say, sure, you can have our gym and have 1,000 people here, as we can understand it. So that's they're looking at doing some modifications, looking at different kinds of competitions that we might be able to do virtually, science competitions, outreach competitions. So we're being creative. They're being creative on a national level. But had it not been for COVID, we would have been at Worlds this year in August. The team qualified due to the chairman. So we're real proud of them. We could not do without your support, so thank you for that. So we don't know exactly, to be honest, Mr. Alexander.
No, it's okay. There's a lot of that right now. I didn't know if you guys had gotten any
We thought
word.
until last week it was going to be fairly normal for us. The
Okay.
younger teams were going to be virtual. Now we're hearing maybe not, just because they can't find facilities is our biggest challenge, it sounds like right now. That could change, and things could change, but the schools could be like, oh, okay, we're good. You can have it in April now.
Right.
So right now we're just planning all kinds of virtual things. We're meeting, still meet every week.
You got a backup plan for the backup plan, guys.
We have backup for backup to backup. And they're still there 6 days a week.
Well, keep us informed.
We
Let
sure will.
us know how we can help.
Thank you, we do appreciate you guys are always so good about, cheering us on. Yes,
Let's
Mr.
put you on
Russell.
the spot. How many chairmans have we won now?
You guys don't have any? 7.
That's in the top, like, 30 in the area, right, for chairman.
Yeah, we're one of the top leaders for obviously, so in 16 years,
So
we won 7.
this year we actually won 5 squad at district level and the state level. And so overall, that will be 7 chairmen.
Yeah, so chairmans is still gonna happen this year with Zoom calls like they did last year. So we're gonna get another one. That's
I like it.
But they're up-
How is it with the Zoom? I mean, are you able to still fully compete? Is it?
Yeah, so when we did the Zoom, it was pretty much equivalent to what it was in person. It's pretty professional in either sense. They had all of the judges zooming in, and we all zoomed in from our own homes. And we were able to share all of our, like, they had all of our binders with information and stuff, so we were able to do it just as if it was in person, really.
So from, I guess, a cup half full, no one wants to, but you've got a new skill.
Yeah, for sure.
Present via Zoom now.
Yeah, definitely. Good lighting and all, we got it all.
Still gonna be January for the info to come out for.
Yes, we still do.
Yes.
So we have till January for maybe things to open up.
We're going to be optimistic. We're going to proceed as if we got a robot. If the door's going to work, we're proceeding as if, right, guys? But they're real, you know, I'm thinking that these guys, what's our motto?
Challenge accepted.
They accept whatever challenge you throw at them. And it's like we say with the tournament, something will break, something will go wrong. Just plan on it. So these guys are just planning on the season. We'll adapt it, right? Very
So
proud of
if
them.
something breaks and something goes wrong, as long as it's not too bad, it's a good story.
It's a good story. That's right. That's right, absolutely. But we're very proud. They've all stepped up. Nobody lost a beat, really. So we weren't able to get into the facility, obviously, for about 4 or 5 months. So it was scary looking at the refrigerator. They kept operating as a team. We're really proud of them.
Science fair project.
Yeah, we probably could have a science lab.
Mrs. Toomey, do you have any other questions?
I do not.
Mr. Hubbard, do you have any other questions? I know you're remote.
Mr. Hubbard's always a supporter. He always comes to
I
see
have
us.
no questions.
All right. Thank you all.
We just wanted to share, and so we ordered extra tea nettles for you all.
Oh, well, thank you.
So you can feel
Thank
better.
you very much.
And you even have regular masks in there.
Oh, good.
And I think you have one of the Team Champion pins in there. So just some goodies, and it's stressful because I don't think you're under any stress or anything like that. Just.
That's awesome.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You all, is that okay?
Yeah,
Absolutely. That was in our children's presentations last time.
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And then the national act.
we'll Photoshop Joe in.
Yes, and all of his muscles.
You also have red alert mask
Oh, yeah.
in your bag.
I'm sure that's what we want to do. You want to go in front here?
Yeah.
You can probably come in front since we're
You guys come in front. How about that? Does that work?
Put the tall guy in front of Rob.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Everybody smile.
There we go. All right, thank you so much. Ready? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's great. Next is our time for public comments. No one has signed up for public comments, so we'll move to the next agenda item. Next on the agenda are consent items. Everyone's received their consent packets. Does anybody have any questions on any of the items in the consent packet? Hearing no questions, do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander and Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor of the consent items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
All those opposed, signify by saying aye. Hearing no opposed, 5-0, the consent items are adopted. Now we go to our action items. Our first action item is to, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bill Long to consider the Student Behavioral Health Services Agreement. Thank you, Dr. Long.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight, we're asking the board to approve an agreement with Community Health Network to provide mental health services to our students in the school system. And part of this agreement requires or says Community Health will provide 2 master's prepared therapists and 1 life skills clinician. By having master's prepared therapists, they can work with kids on Medicaid or with private insurance. And just so far, since we've been back to school, we've had about 169 kids referred already, and they're in the process of doing the intake for them and to start working with them. So that part's gone really well. This agreement is just for 1 year, starting July 1st of 2020 and ending on June 30th of 2021. And the reason for that is I think Mr. Taylor is working on a master agreement between the school corporation and Community Health that would incorporate this into that master agreement. The reason we're bringing this to the board tonight is because the dollar amount that we're paying to get the program started is over $50,000, and we're required to have the board approve those agreements. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. It's interesting to note that the one therapist that started with us actually lived in the Center Grove district, so she was right across the street from Pleasant Grove, so she was really excited to start working with us, and we've been really happy. I know Heather's been really happy, and we've had lots of conversations about how this will work in our schools, and our counselors are making referrals, our parents are making referrals, so really think, especially in the year with COVID and after last year, how important this is for us to have licensed therapists to work with our students.
Well, the one thing, I'm glad we're doing this ahead, not waiting on getting the rest of the agreement in place. I know we were trying to get that done, but I'm glad we're pulling this piece out to go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think your point's well taken. I mean, kids these ages have enough challenges, let alone this year with are they going to be e-learning, are they going to be hybrid, are they going to be traditional? You know, the fact that we've got 169 referrals, I think, you know, is a victory, because those are 169 kids that some of them wouldn't have otherwise gotten any kind of help.
Right.
So thank your group, thank Community Health and everybody else trying to fill this gap that was out there. And hopefully, you know, come next year, we get the full agreement.
Sure.
For consideration, but thanks for all you do, Bill. Do I hear any other comments with respect to the community health and mental health proposal? Hearing no other questions and comments, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the letter agreement with Community Health Network for the behavioral health services.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Alexander, Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor of the behavioral health agreement with Community Health Services for 2020 to 2021, from July 1, 2020 to July 31, 2021, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
I'm an aye, for sure.
Opposed? Hearing no one opposed, the ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, he'll be back.
No, I don't think we do all 15 minutes, so you can have to do the next part.
You know, he wants to step. Next, we're going to the school improvement plans, and Mrs. Nora Hoover will be presenting tonight. So, Mrs. Hoover? The walk didn't used to be as long when we all could sit up here, did it?
No. Shady's okay, though.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you. Per Indiana code, you see me standing here over here in front of you, because all public schools must annually submit a school improvement plan. Also per Indiana State Board of Education rules, the plans must be submitted to and approved by the governing body prior to that submission. The applicable legal standard requires that each school submit their full revised 3-year school improvement plan, and all of our schools will need to do that no later than October 2nd. The Indiana School Improvement Plan process is part of the striving for continual improvement in our schools. To be effective, the plan should be reviewed as a living document, evolving as circumstances change during a 3-year period covered by that year's submission. Each of our school has reviewed and considered any available assessment data and revised their school plan to reflect the building needs of the students there this year. The student achievement goals for each building is the basis for their strategies and professional development throughout the year. And so our schools, these updated versions you have, they used the best data they had, because of course we didn't have standardized testing last spring. They did fall back to, what they did know, but we also luckily have NWEA, and also we could use our essential learning data from our professional learning communities, from those grade level teams. And with all of that knowledge, they will plan all their professional development and staff development for the year based on that to meet these goals.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
You're welcome.
Do I have any comments or questions from any board members?
I think just, as I was looking through, and there was a lot of information there. The one thing that really jumped out at me, and it was actually, I did read all 31 pages, but it was the very first, it was on page 1. The SAT scores have increased on the math steadily every year, and we started at 524 in 2014-15 up to 585 in 19 and 20. And that's, in my mind, that's a pretty significant increase in a 5-year time span.
That's true.
I agree. And I like the goal, again, to get to 597 here by the end of this year. So obviously, we're doing something right in the area of math when it comes to our SAT scores, and we seem to be on a steady improvement route there. And that's where I like to see those improvements is on those types of tests as the kids are working on getting to college or whatever their choices after high school.
The diploma and SAT scores, those are two of our big gateways to what comes next. So I appreciate that the work that obviously our high school does, but we all know that it starts with that kindergarten class. And we are so fortunate how well our buildings prepare our kids for the next level.
And not to discount the verbal, we've increased their steadily as well. So just I caught that as well, but we've seen steady increases in both, which I think is a testament to the work we put in, all the way through the system.
I've got a question, I guess. I know with standardized testing, as you said, we didn't have a lot of it last year because of the challenges that we had. We're not sure this year what's going to happen because of the challenges. Unless something's happened in the last week that I'm not aware of.
I don't expect it to not have tests this year.
Right.
Honestly.
So how are we going to measure ourselves? I know we have SATs, which are wonderful, but what other ways have we found, trying to think outside the box and get creative, to measure the impact we're having? Can you give us some more examples of how we've worked through this?
Yes, absolutely. So probably the most important piece of data we have for the through the first grade through 8th grade is our NWEA. And actually we started that with kindergartners too. It just looks a little different, but that score is correlated starting in 3rd grade to our standardized assessment in Indiana. So we can get a projection of how we think kids will do on that test. But because the scores are in a continuum, you can start to see where kids are at because it puts everything in quartiles, so we can see if kids, where they're at on the box and whiskers chart. We use that not only to find out who needs enrichment, but also who needs remediation, or who's on the bubble. We get to compare ourselves not only nationally, but also against our own students, because we typically, our average line falls above the national average. So that's a great piece of data, and we have been using NWEA. I think this is the 6th year that we've been able to do that with our formative assessment grant money.
And you made the comment too about the PLCs working together and being able
Absolutely.
to... Can you give us just a few more examples of that, of how they're able to... I mean, it doesn't have to be across the whole
Sure.
school. There's just a couple of examples of...
Sure. So, for example, in a 7th grade math class, our teachers have selected from all of the long lists of standards. There are some that are more important than others. usually because they have endurance. They're necessary not only to learn now, but if you don't get it now, the next thing you're not going to get either. So they've picked these standards based on a few different categories, and those are called essential learnings. And those are the top priority things kids need to learn in each grade level. They're not the only thing, but they're the top priorities. And we need kids to reach high levels of learning, to be proficient in all of those, and that's always our goal. Everything on top of that's great, but that's our kind of our basement, what we want kids to reach. Our PLCs in each grade level are tracking those and how kids are doing in each one of those essential learnings. And those things we keep going back to. They spiral that curriculum so they're catching those kids that aren't there all year long. It's not like we did that and we moved on and we're done teaching that now. Those they teach continually, because it also helps the kids that got it at that point not forget it. So,
Thank you. I appreciate
you're
that.
welcome.
I find that spiral to be most important in elementary. Of course, that's where my heart is, but.
I bet Dr. Henderson will probably tell you all that with your high school, but
But
especially in math.
spiral needs to be there
Yeah.
in the elementary for the basics before they
Yes.
can move to that next level, before they get into high school.
Yes, and our elementary teachers, actually K through 8, have gotten really good at managing their curriculum that way, and they're really doing it together. And we're all better together, right? And the PLC process has really improved and made us more effective.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Mrs. Hoover? Hearing no additional questions or comments, can I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 2020-2021 school improvement plans for all the schools as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander and Mr. Russell. All those in favor of approving the 2020-2021 school improvement plan as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Mrs. Hoover.
Thank you. I just want to share, I'm presenting the cumulative work of not only our principals, but their leadership teams. And so I want to thank them for all their hard work, because not only do they do this, they make this a priority all year. And so I want to thank all of them, because
Pass the thank
this
you
is
down from
their
us.
job.
Pass it from us too, please.
And I'm assuming what we submit is the 31-page document, not just the summary that's here.
Yes, they have to go into, and submit
There's a
theirs into their
database that
school.
gets uploaded.
Yep, yes.
Good enough.
Next on the agenda is Dr. Paul Gabriel, the CFO, who's going to speak about resolution for financing of the Sugar Grove Elementary building project.
Thank you. This is the third time we've taken formal action on this particular project, and probably other times we've talked about it. So there's nothing really new here. None of the details about the financing have changed any. I just wanted to highlight what the schedule is for this as this project proceeds. We had our first 1028 hearing on June 18th, our second one on July 23rd. This evening, the board's approving a financing resolution, and then in November, we will have an additional appropriation hearing, and that will be the end of the formal approval processes. We expect to have the money available in December. Then the board will actually approve the bids for this work, hopefully sometime in the spring of 2021, and Dr. Long anticipates that this would be completed by the summer of 2023. So that's a quick review of where we've been and where we're going, and as I said, there's no other new information, so I would ask the board this evening to approve the resolution that's been presented to them.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Do I hear any questions or comments with respect to the proposed Sugar Grove financing for the Sugar Grove Elementary building project? Hearing no questions or comments. I'm sorry, did you have? Okay, hearing no questions or comments, do I hear a motion?
I move that we adopt a resolution approving the form of the lease with the Center Grove Multi-Facility Building Corporation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander and Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard?
I'm an aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Please show that the vote is 4-1 in favor. Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Now we move to a motion to consider the approval of a resolution regarding the possible sale of the Sugar Grove property.
And again, this is something that has been in front of the board in past years.
Dr. Gabriel, let me back you up. I apologize. This is an advertised hearing.
I'm sorry, you're right.
So I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Yep, sorry.
This evening's board meeting has been appropriately advertised as a public hearing for the possible sale of the Sugar Grove property. And just so everyone knows, it's not the Sugar Grove School itself. It's the property just south of the school.
Yeah, so this evening is a hearing for the possible sale of Sugar Grove property, and I'll turn over the meeting to Mr. Daniels to run.
We're talking about the sale of potentially 37 acres of land adjacent to Sugar Grove Elementary that we've determined is no longer useful for school purposes. I now open this public hearing and turn it over to Dr. Gabriel to provide some more information about the potential sale of the property.
Okay, so we went through this same process in 2017 and 18, and we're talking about previously we held an auction for this property. As Mr. Daniel said, 37 acres just south of the Sugar Grove building. The highest bid at the time was $1,200,000. The sale, however, never was closed because of problems obtaining the sewer permits. So we are going to do the same thing again. We've had contact from the vendors that bid at that time saying that they believe the sewer situation has been resolved to the point where they would like to buy the property. And obtaining the sewers is not our problem at all, it's theirs, so that's between them and the various agencies. But this is the schedule that we're following as we go through this again. On September 11th, we put a notice in the paper about this. This evening is a board hearing which declares the board's intent to sell this property. Then tomorrow we will put a notice in the paper advertising the auction, and a week later a second notice advertising the auction. Then we will have the auction. We'll receive sealed bids on the 14th of October, and bidders will have opportunities, and we control that process to up their bids if they so choose. And our intention, then the auction time period closes on the 16th of October, and hopefully at that point we will pick the highest bidder. If we can get the purchase agreement prepared and approved, we would bring it to the board in October, which would be ideal. If it takes more time to work through that, then it would be brought to the board in November. So that's the process that we're going through in brief. And at this point, I turn it back over to Mr. Daniels to conclude the hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. This is the appropriate time if any member of the public would like to comment on the possible sale of a portion of the Sugar Grove property or the information presented this evening in this public hearing. Are there members of the public who are present who would like to comment? Mr. Poore, if you could please come up to the microphone so we can hear you. And I believe we have 3 minutes, correct? Mr. Poore, we'll give you 3 minutes. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Just to go back a few years, we were going to build another grade school at this property, just like the same style and thing. It was just another grade school. So I guess I don't know what the board has been thinking, because we got to build a new grade school in the northern part of our township. So what's the thinking of the board? Are we going to go buy more land to build a new school? You know, I don't know, but I think since we've already got a piece of property here that is paid for and we can build on, that selling it, because that's, to me, looks like a ideal situation to put another school right there to help us out. That's about all I have to say. I don't know what you guys have been talking about as far as looking ahead where you're going to build this new school. But if you have to buy property now, we got it already there and stuff. So I don't know where we're going to build it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment on the public hearing about the proposed sale of a portion of the Sugar Grove property? Hearing no other public comment, I close this public hearing. Are there any members of the board who would like to comment or have any questions for Dr. Gabriel relating to the potential sale of the property?
I guess I have two comments. And Mr. Farr, I'll answer your question, and I may not get them in the same order. While I think all of us up here agree and part of our planning process is in the elementary school, it's not on the north side of the district. It's truly going to have to be to the south, because that's where all the building is occurring. The second piece of that is we've had a lot of conversation about traffic congestion and those types of things, and dropping another elementary school in that same space, I think Dr. Long would attest, and I think the Sheriff's Department would attest, is going to create a logistical traffic problem in that area, because there's really not a whole lot of room to improve the infrastructure there. Back to the sewer issue, and I want to make sure everybody's clear, it was not a school problem, it was a City of Greenwood problem, because they had run out of their capacity to allow any additional permits to be issued until they upgraded the sewer system, and that problem on the north end of our district has been resolved now. So, which is why we can now come up with a resolution to sell the property. So, just a couple of insights there that maybe everybody forgot about from a couple years ago.
And I think Scott very well stated, and I'll add a little bit on top of that too. That data is coming back showing us that, yeah, growth in the next school needs to be south, and we're hoping to use this property that once was thought a good location for another elementary school, and now the new thinking we're hearing from our administration is it would be better to locate it one further south, and two, not in a heavy congested area like right next to two schools. When they both have events, nobody can find parking. We run into that with three schools next to each other here with Center Grove Elementary, Center Grove Middle, and Center Grove High. If they all have an event the same night, good luck, you gotta get there early. So the new thinking is to spread them out more. A lot more people drop their kids off in the morning. So we have to pack cars in all of our elementary schools to try to accommodate for that. So yes, we are thinking ahead. Yes, we're hoping to use this money for those type issues. And instead of having a piece of property sit there that is in essence just not generating income, and if we could ultimately use that money for something else for the school, we think being good stewards, we need to consider that. But I do appreciate your questions, and I agree with you 100%. The old plan was to have two next to each other. That's been reconsidered, so the new elementary needs to be somewhere else eventually.
If I could just kind of fill in on that too, if you look at Vision 10,000, you'll see that Sugar Grove was never a flip concept. That was Maple Grove, so I think you're getting a little confused on that.
Thanks.
Sugar Grove never had an expansion on that Sugar Grove property. Only Maple Grove did. Sugar Grove's been pretty much contained by Smith Valley Road and Peterman. It's really hard to get any kind of traffic around there. And then when we had the demographic study and the growth study, all of the growth is down south, as you pointed out, and we are looking at property down that way. And just no matter where we would build a building and open it, it is going to create the ever-dreaded redistricting situation. So that will happen as well. But Dr. Long will he promised that he's not going to let that happen, right, in his tenure, his remaining tenure.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
misunderstood too, Mr. Ford.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
it
no.
was set for a.
Yeah,
2
True
elevators.
Growth, yeah, and you can see that on the Vision 10,000 website. So if you dig down in there, Stacy's done a really good job of kind of laying that out and how we put that together, so.
Any other comments relating to the potential sale of the Sugar Grove property?
Mr. Daniels, excuse me, one thing I meant to mention I didn't, and that is, I did say when we bid this the last time, the winning bid was $1.2 million, and in the documents that we'll provide to any potential bidders, we're allowed to specify a minimum bid. Our intention, those documents specify that the minimum bid is $1.2 million, so we won't be any worse off than we were a year and a half ago. Hopefully, we'll be better off if there's more competition. We'll just have to wait and see.
Dr. Gabriel, you took my last question.
Oh, okay. I meant to say that and forgot.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because we're not desperate to sell this land. We're going to sell this land for what it's worth in order to use it for other school needs.
Right.
And if it doesn't garner that now, we'll hold on to it. We'll sell it in a few years for what it's worth then.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you pointing out the minimum bid of $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Hubbard, I know you're remote, so I'll ask you if you have comments or questions.
No, I don't have any comments. Thanks, Mr. Ford, for getting up there and asking those questions. I'm glad Scott was able to answer them.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution regarding the possible sale of the Sugar Grove property.
Do I hear a second? I'll second this one. Thank you, Mr. Alexander, and thank myself too. Hearing a motion and a second on the sale of the excess property at Sugar Grove, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those, Mr. Hubbard?
I'm an aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to break protocol, but that's one I think if we can generate money to use elsewhere, let's do it. Okay,
Yes, our next item is the budget hearing. And this evening is the hearing for the 2021 budget, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Daniels to run the hearing.
thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. This evening's board meeting has been appropriately advertised as a hearing on the 2021 budget, the bus replacement plan, and the capital projects fund. I now open this public hearing and turn it over to Dr. Gabriel.
Thank you. I think this is the 14th time I've gotten up in front of this board to make a presentation, never with a mask on, so we'll see if I can get through it without too much stumbling. This is a public hearing on the budget. This shows you the overall schedule for the budget. We advertise it no longer in the paper, but on the Gateway State website, and it also shows our own website where the full budget presentation, about 100 pages, is available for the public to view right now. This evening is a budget hearing, and then at our next regular scheduled board meeting on October 27th, we will be adopting the budget and the two replacement plans. This is kind of an agenda of the topics to be discussed this evening. I'm going to go very quickly. I think the intention here is to not take a lot of time, but to let the public know that it's available for them to look at in more detail. First thing I want to talk about is the impact of COVID-19 on our finances. And this slide summarizes the expenses that we have incurred to date with respect to COVID. It has continued to grow, and this is not the end of this list. This is a summary of what we have turned in to FEMA, and that situation is a little bit fluid right now. We will probably turn in more later. We have until the end of the year to complete that process, and we really don't have any idea when we'll get paid or how much. They've said that 75% is the maximum they would pay us back, but we don't know what will be approved for payment and what won't. And that has changed over the past few weeks, so it's kind of a fluid situation. The second item is a little bit about enrollment. This shows you a summary of where we are right now. Our enrollment when we on 8/31, when we closed the budget for all the changes, was 8,856, an increase of 106 over last year. It has fluctuated by a student or two since then, but that's about where we will land, we think. So just in general, the official enrollment date is September the 18th. Our preliminary enrollment is 8856, but that certainly will change a little bit before the final numbers are produced. We have until sometime in October to get any errors resolved, so it's not final yet. The enrollment that was the basis of our advertised budget was 8865, because that's where we were on the 1st of September. And so we're a little bit short because we're probably not going to get back up to that. And for every student we miss that goal by, we lose $5,700, and that ends up being some out of cash balance. Then the next issue I want to talk about is the Capital Projects Fund. That's part of this hearing this evening, and there's a capital asset plan available on our website that lists projects that are assets to be purchased over $10,000. Since 2010, we've supplemented the CPF revenue with GO bonds, and we intend to do the same thing again for next year's budget. For next year, the bonds will total $5.17 million. These bonds support maintenance projects and technology projects, and we have financed them over 2 years so that every year one bond falls off and it gets replaced with a new bond. I'm not going to go into the details, but this is the list of maintenance projects, and it shows you what is in what used to be the CPF, now the operations fund, and what's in the bonds for the maintenance department. And then the next slide is the same thing for the technology department. I'm sure if you had any questions, Dr. Long and Mr. Taylor could answer those for you about the specifics. We also have a bus replacement plan that is being considered this evening in this hearing. For 2021, we intend to replace 10 buses at a total cost of about $1 million. We're replacing, most of those are large 78-passenger buses that cost more than $100,000, and we're also replacing a couple of the activity buses that cost less than that. So that's where you get to the total of $1 million. Normally, I go through a list of some of the major changes in the education fund and the operations fund to just talk about big things that impact the budget over the really big items. And I want to mention a few things here. First of all, we have taken $450,000 in our revenue for next year and assigned it to the emergency account in the operations fund. We've done this because we anticipate some significant expenses next year for COVID, just like we've had this year. Don't know what that'll be, but we anticipate a couple of years here in which money is going to be very tight, and this sets that money aside in case we need it. We've added new positions in the budget for next year. One administrator, that's the Director of Mental Health and School Counseling. 13.5 teachers in the bargaining unit, and that includes 9.5 classroom teachers, 3 social workers, and 1 SEL specialist. We've added 6 support staff, that's 2 bus drivers, a bus monitor, and then 6 half-time custodians, which we put in the elementary schools to assist in the cleaning process in the elementary schools. And we've also put into the budget 1 police officer. That's not a new position, but it was originally paid from the grant. And so to keep that police officer, we're going to be paying them out of the operations fund next year. For health insurance, we've increased our expenses in that area, 8.1% on the corporation side of the paying for premiums, and for employees it will be 1.4% of their premium. So that's a fairly small amount for employees. We've had to increase various maintenance accounts by a total of $200,000 as we look at next year's budget, because they've had some significant increases in expenses, and we've been very, very tight for the last couple of years on their budgets. And we had to increase utility accounts by $125,000 and that's about 4.4% of the utility account. So those are some of the big changes that we made. I typically prepare a comparison like this that looks at the revenue versus the expense. And for the education fund and the operations fund, those are balanced budgets, revenues equal expenses. For the debt service fund, they're slightly different because the state provides a formula for cash balance. And based on that formula, we need to decrease and spend a little cash balance next year. That every year there's a slight adjustment because of the way that formula works. In terms of the impact on the tax rate of this budget, our current tax rate is $1.0067. It's going to be $1.0264. At least that's our estimate. That's up 1.93 cents. We always, when we advertise our budgets and prepare the official forms, we always estimate high because in case we've made any mistakes, historically we are very, very close to that the expected rate, but we always cover ourselves a little bit by advertising a higher rate. In terms of that overall tax rate, which we anticipate will be just under $1.03 for next year, you can see we have since 2009 maintained a very level tax rate. Our goal has always been to keep it less than that $1.04 that it was in 2009, and we've been able to meet that goal. I'm sure we will be able to do that for 2021. And just to do a comparison, this shows the different school districts in Johnson County and where we are. And this chart hasn't changed much. I like to say if you stood away from it and just kind of got the overall picture and ignore the numbers, the shape hasn't changed. You have Clark Pleasant and Franklin at the top and kind of leading it, and then Center Grove and Edinburgh kind of in the middle, and then two others that are a little smaller. That overall structure of those hasn't changed much. In terms of the impact of this budget on a taxpayer, we have in the past used a home valued at $300,000 just as a point of comparison. And for that homeowner, you can see the calculations, but the bottom line is that they would end up in school taxes paying $15 more next year than they paid this year. And again, this chart, it's important to understand that's just school taxes. That's not the total tax rate, which obviously we don't control the other parts of the tax rate. In terms of cash balance, that's something we talk about, and I know it's important to the board. Right now, in 2019, we pretty much had to change the way we do the computation because the state restructured the funds. And so in 2019, we had about a 7% tax rate. Tax rate. Had about 7.6% cash balance. That's equivalent to $5 million. And it's so difficult right now to predict what it will be at the end of this year. With all the COVID expenses in there, not knowing if we're going to get any FEMA money this year or not. Just a lot of unique variables about this year. But this shows you the impact if we have the same $5 million at the end of 2020 that we had at the end of 2019. That percentage would be 7.2%. So that's where we are for now. So in summary, this is kind of goes back over the key points. Education and Operations Fund are balanced budgets. Current enrollment is 8856, up 106 students from last year. And that's going to change a little bit, but not much, we don't think, when we get our final counts. Our estimated tax rate for next year is $1.026, and that's up 1.93 cents from this year. And on a $300,000 home, annual impact would be an increase of $15 annually. These are this is just some information. That web address at the top shows you where you can look at the entire budget that's available to people right now to look at if they want more information. So this is a public hearing. I'll turn it back to Mr. Daniels to conclude the hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. As part of the public hearing, this is an appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the budget that's proposed or information presented? If there are members of the public who'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Mr. Ford? I'll turn the microphone over to you. Thank you, Dr. Ford. Mr. Ford, can you wait till you get the microphone, that would make sure we get your comment. Thank you.
Where will we be in the balancing of the budget if the state only gives us 85% for the partial or for the virtual kids compared to we get 100%? You know, if we get $5,000 or $6,000 per child, regular, if he's attending class, then we're only going to get 85% of that if he's home doing computer. And the other second thing is on the bonds, the GO bonds. I believe we were going to finance this new emergency ambulance station thing out of GO bonds.
Right.
Can that be done?
I can respond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Mr. Ford. They're very good questions. And I know Dr. Gabriel has an answer.
Well, the first one about what happens if we get only 85% for virtual students. I would describe that as a political football right now. It's in the hands of the politicians in Indianapolis. We've been assured that it isn't going to happen that way, that we're going to get 100% for our particular situation, the way they're talking right now, we're going to get 100%. So that's not a terribly big concern. I don't think it's written in stone yet, but that's the direction everybody's saying they're going to go. I did do the math. I'm not going to quote a number off the top of my head. I'll be happy to get it to you because I don't remember what it was. But it is a significant chunk. I think as we looked at this early on, we said, you know, if that happens, it will probably be a one-year hit, and we'll take that out of cash balance. So for 1 year. So I think if that were to happen, it's not like we'd have to go back in and say, okay, how can we find a way to eliminate something or modify the budget? I think we'd like to continue to have the budget look just the way it is, and all that would be impacted would be that cash balance chart. And the other question was about... Oh, yes. I know that's... We've said that before, and I think you've asked that question before. And the answer to your question is that involves more long-term planning that we've been doing. But yes, we can finance that project. And yes, we can do it without increasing the tax rate. However, we're still in a process where we are planning for that project, going through the design, and we're not in a position to sell the bonds at this time. So in 2021, and that's what this budget is for, calendar year 2021, we will not be paying back any of those bonds. So that's why you don't see it as part of this budget. But it is part of our long-term planning. And barring any crazy thing in the financial markets, if things continue as they are, we shouldn't have any difficulty financing those bonds without increasing the tax rate. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment? Seeing no further comment from the public, I hereby close the public comment section of the hearing. Now I ask, is there anyone on the board who has any questions or comments with respect to the proposed budget?
I had one, Dr. Gabriel, and it was, and I'm sorry the number didn't jump out at me until I was sitting here. I know normally and I think I know the answer to this question, but normally we use $6,000 just as a round number when we're talking about how much we get per student. Mm-hmm. I noticed this said 5,700.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, well, I'll let you answer my question before I make all the wrong assumptions.
Yeah. Unfortunately, both answers are right. Is it 6,000? Yes, it is. 6,000 is an all-inclusive number. It includes things like honors grant and extra money for special ed and extra money for CTE. Doesn't include title.
Okay.
It's everything that's in these two funds.
Okay.
But when we talk about the differential, if we're going to be off by 10 students one way or the other, that's probably not going to impact the number of honors kids and the number of special. Those 10 kids aren't going to, unless we happen to hit one of those. So I try to use the number when we talk about the differential that might be impacted by missing an enrollment target like that. I exclude those other things.
I assume that was the answer, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to make that assumption.
So is it
Sure.
fair to say another way to look at it is you use the conservative, more conservative number? The
Yeah.
5,700?
Yeah.
Is that the actual number we get from the state?
Well, we don't,
Like taking out all the other factors? That's probably hard to compute.
I'd have to look exactly at what was left. It's very close to the exact number. There's a printout that we get that shows the exact number, and it's very close to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the printout in a while. So.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions on the budget hearing?
I got one comment. Mr. Ford, great question on the 85%, by the way. I know Dr. Arkanoff and Mr. Taylor and I think Dr. Long and several members of his cabinet were on the phone with a couple of the state legislators when that all hit the news, and
Yeah.
there was several assurances given, I think, during that call that wasn't going to be the case, but it's not inked in stone yet. So until the session starts and the session's over, your perception is very spot on and accurate.
The state board did take some action to change the definition, which will help.
Yeah.
To change the definition of what a virtual student is for public schools like us. So that should take care of getting the full 100% for those students, which we have roughly 1,200 of.
Yeah.
So now, instead of there being a gap with the new language, it would take the legislature arguably to pass a new law in a political climate where it would be very not favorable
Yeah.
to take money away from schools who are battling everything we're battling. That's not legal advice, that's just an observation.
As Dr. Gabriel said, the political football.
Yeah, right.
On that note, any other board comments or questions for Dr. Gabriel on anything relating to the budget? And there's no action required tonight, so I'm not going to ask for a motion, but I do thank you, Dr. Gabriel and Mr. Four and others for contributing this and your team that goes into helping all this too. So thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hubbard, did you have a comment? I didn't ask. I haven't closed it yet.
No, I don't have any comments right now. Thanks for the input, Paul.
The board will consider the budget at its next meeting on October 22nd, 2020. Does anyone have any other business tonight? Mrs. Toomey, I'll start with you. I thought I did.
I have nothing to bring to the board at this time, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Russell? Mr. Hubbard?
No, I have nothing.
Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission, one of my extra board responsibilities as the non-voting advisory member of the Redevelopment Commission. They are moving ahead with the River District. No, you guys can't see the smile under my mask as I say the River District in the city of Greenwood. But there's a lot of businesses that come forward for some approvals and some tax abatements and liquor licenses and those types of things. But I think very soon you're going to start to see some new and different types of restaurants going on in downtown Greenwood. I'm personally pretty excited by that. They're trying to attract some new and different businesses into the downtown Greenwood area. So Mayor Myers and his team have put a full court press on that, and I didn't bring my notes to the meeting. There's a company that's Milwaukee Tools, Power Tools, is making a big investment in the city of Greenwood, and they're going to be bringing in think it's estimated to be 800 to 1,200 jobs, if I'm recalling this correctly. I didn't grab my RDC folder, which is very exciting for the city of Greenwood. The other cool piece of that is they have a sister plant in Greenwood, Tennessee as well. So we got two cities of Greenwood for Milwaukee tools. And it's going to be more of a repair area for tools, and they were excited to be partnering with Central 9 to help with some of that as well, to help see if they could beef up the workforce. So some pretty exciting things going on over on the other side of 135.
Appreciate the update. Dr. Arkanoff, do you have anything to add?
No.
All I want to do is thank everybody for patience during COVID. If your kids are sick, keep them at home. If you're a teacher and you're sick, stay at home. Our numbers are looking better because everybody's getting it. Everybody's wearing their masks. Everybody's doing what we need to do. So we're in this together. We'll get through this together. Everybody, please, please, please continue to follow the guidelines.
That's one important piece. If you're awaiting COVID test results, stay home.
Yes.
Don't send your kids to school if you're awaiting COVID test results, because that doesn't help you.
Or if a parent is waiting, please keep the kid home. Anybody in the home's waiting, please keep your kid home. Because we know there will likely be another COVID or two infection here and there, but we don't want to quarantine 50 kids for one infection. So please stay home if you're sick. On that note, we've got a couple of announcements. On October 22nd, we're going to have a board work session, followed by an executive session. The board work session will start at 11:30. I don't know if the time for the executive session's been set yet, but we'll get that out when it is. Keep your eyes open. It'll be posted. And then our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be October 22nd, right here in this room at 7 o'clock. So having no further questions, comments, I thank everybody for their time tonight, and we'll adjourn the meeting.